Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Intuition Summit. I'm Emmy Vadnais, one of your co-hosts, co-facilitators, and partner in Love versus Crime, along with Abby Gooch. Hi, Abby.
Hey, nice to see you again.
We have the distinct pleasure of talking with Katherine Shainberg today, who is an internationally renowned transpersonal psychologist, lecturer, visionary, teacher, and award-winning author. She is the founder of the School of Images, a New York-based institute and global network of study centers that use the power of dream images and imagination for transformational purposes. Grounded in the Kabbalah, her work integrates ancient wisdom and teachings with modern Western knowledge and techniques to catalyze creative manifestation at all levels, in all areas of life, including personal, professional, communal, and global. This is one of my favorite parts. She is the lineage holder of the Cabala of Light. She studied the Cabala of Light in Jerusalem with renowned Kabbalist, if I'm going to say it correct here, Madame Colette Abulker Muscat?
Abulker Muscat.
Beautiful. She is author of Dream Birth, Transforming the Journey of Childbirth Through Imagery, Kabbalah and the Power of Dreaming, Awakening the Visionary Life, and the Kabbalah of Light, Ancient Practices to Ignite the Imagination and Illuminate the Soul. Welcome, Katherine.
Thank you so much. That was a mouthful.
It is. It is. You've done so much, and you've been sharing your beautiful love, heart, and insights with intuition for a number of years. I'm wondering if you could share with us a little bit, because I think you have a really unique story about how you got into what you're doing now. In fact, I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, that you had a full ride to Harvard, and you chose to pass it up for what your intuition was telling you.
I did. I had a scholarship to Harvard, a full scholarship to Harvard. It wasn't a Fulbright, but it was a scholarship. And I kept on hearing, you've got to go to the Middle East. So I'd gone all over the Middle East, but now I was going to Harvard. And then I kept on hearing, you've got to go to Israel. And this was really stunning because I was not interested in Israel or I didn't know anything about it really. So, but the inner voice to me was incredibly important, which means that I have always strived to follow it, even when it sounded completely strange and untoward, I would follow it. So I let go of the scholarship to Harvard and I went to a kibbutz in Israel. And so the journey really began there because at the time I wasn't Jewish. And something happened. I was on the kibbutz for about 2 years, wondering what in the hell I was doing there. I had no idea why I was there. And because I was not a Jew, I was cooking for the Jews on Yom Kippur. And that's when planes started flying over the airspace, which was something untoward. And we were suddenly at war. And I cooked for, or made sandwiches for all the men of the kibbutz, which were quite a number of them, because they left in the next 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so there I was on the kibbutz alone with maybe all the women, the children, and 3 men who were guarding the kibbutz. And I was one of the assistants to the guards. And that's why somebody started reading to me the Bible. It was very astonishing and very moving. You could hear the bombing because we were down south, very far down south. We could hear the bombing. And he was reading these incredible texts. And the one that really struck me was the one about Abraham. Go where? So anyway, this resonated within me. And then at the end of the war, some young people came to the kibbutz. They were all French. I'm French. So it was I sat with them. And one of them mentioned a lady that everybody went to see in Jerusalem called Colette. And at that moment, I had an epiphany. The whole of my head exploded into light. I had no idea who she was. She wasn't a teacher for him. She was a socialite who gathered the French people around her. But I knew I had to go and see her. So I left the kibbutz since I was following my dream, right? I left the kibbutz and went to Jerusalem. And that was very complicated because the man who wanted to take me there was really, who had talked to me about it, was really terrified and didn't want to take me there. So it was a whole other maybe 6 months of going there, coming back to the kibbutz, going there, and finally moving to Jerusalem because I knew I had to meet this lady, knowing nothing about her. Right? So finally, he did take me there, and I sat in front of her. She was a queen, a beautiful woman, very regal, and she said to me, "What do you want?" Which is terrifying when you're 28 and you have no idea what you want. And I found myself saying, opening my mouth and saying, "I want you to teach me how images move people." Now, I was an art historian, but that's what I was really interested in, right? And she said, "I've waited for you a long time." So that was the beginning of my training with somebody I didn't even know was a teacher. So that's the beginning of the story. I don't know if you want to hear the whole story right away, but I can intersperse it as we go along. Right?
I think it's so beautiful you followed your intuition early on. I also left a scholarship too. So I know that feeling of being like, I just know I need to go and I need to do it now. And the dean was like, "Are you crazy?" I'm like, "Maybe, but I'm going anyways," and I started my practice, like, what was it, 6 months later. So I think it's really amazing when we take action on that inner voice and listen to our intuition, what can happen from that.
It can be very frightening, right?
Yes, it can. It absolutely can. But I find following it makes it easier. Actually, when you take action on it, it's like, oh, I am okay. It is good,
Well, but it takes a little while. I mean, it does take a little while. I was 2 years on the kibbutz thinking, what in the world have I done?
It can.
And then it was extraordinarily, fraught with tension and war and so forth, so dramatic. But I never wavered. I was there was a reason, and I was going to wait, even in the darkness, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you know that because I suppose it took you also some time, right?
I mean, when I was actually the opposite. It was immediate for me. When I knew, and I acted very fast because that's just kind of my personality. Like, I'm a marathon runner. Like, I like to move fast. So my spirit moves that way. So I just took action and created the practice and the following and started teaching and writing. So it just, yeah, I think everybody's different, like it could be fast or slow, but the knowingness, we were talking with Jeffrey Mishlove earlier, and I agree with him. It's a knowing. Intuition is that knowing, and to trust that place of truth within us, I feel brings us in alignment with our soul. And when we're doing that, we're amazing. We're on purpose and we feel good. So
what is so amazing is how precise it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true.
And it's precise. I mean, I arrived in Israel, and then I'll continue with the story. So I studied with her for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then my aunt came over, not my mother, who was really angry at me for being in Israel, but my aunt. And I said to her, "Well, why don't you come with me to see my teacher, Colette?" She said, "Okay." So we go into Colette's house, and suddenly these two older ladies embrace like mad. "Oh, I'm so glad to see you." It was totally astonishing. They fell into each other's arms. They'd been to school together. My mother lived across the street from her in Oran, which is a town in Algeria. Right? So it was an event that was so strange that the teacher that I had found through the inner voice was, in fact, a neighbor of my mother's.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning of the story. It's going to go on further, but the guidance was so clear and direct and precise. Right?
It's a very powerful story, and we want to hear more about it. Both of you, and myself included, but both of you have talked about how you listen to your intuition. And it sounds like for Abby, it was very clear and strong right out the gate. And for you, it sounds like it was something that you were trusting, but as you went, you were getting validation and learning to trust it as you went, Katherine?
Oh, I had been working with the intuition for many, many years before that. Although I was only 28 when I met my teacher, Colette. But when I was a student in Paris, I'd do all sorts of exercises that came to me, like from today on for 3 weeks, nobody's going to call me. I would close the telephone, the imaginal telephone. And then I would give a specific time when I would open the telephone. And sure enough, there'd be nobody calling me for those three weeks. And then on that exact hour, the phone would ring. So I was proving to myself again and again how it worked, right? I had all sorts of techniques to develop the intuition because I'd always had it since I was a tiny child. So I was now verifying it again and again. Verification, I think, is important. I talk to my students a lot about the verification because it helps them to be able to trust themselves, right?
Yeah.
If not, they think, well, it's fantasy. Not everyone is so driven. They have to learn how to trust it.
To start with the simple things. I think for me, it was like, okay, just one thing. Oh, that was right. And so it builds, it's like a muscle, just starting slow.
Yeah. I mean, I would have an intuition. If you take this bracelet, you're going to lose it. Well, I would take it because it was worth my while to lose the bracelet to know that it was
right
working.
Yeah.
I would write it down. So I had all these, or I'd have a dream that felt like an intuition, and I would write it down with the date and all the rest. And then if it happened, which it generally did, I would go back and put a kind of a Nike sign on it and say, it worked. It worked. It was, to me, one of the more interesting things that I was doing as a student in Paris.
Yeah. I like how you were tracking it. So it sounds like you're saying that the intuition is, or I'd like to hear your definition of intuition. It sounds like you were receiving information. It also sounds like you were manifesting or creating and also being precognitive. So can you kind of share how you look at what intuition is and how we can create what we want, and where, and this is kind of a three-parter, and where does sort of like predestiny come in around being precognitive, if that makes any sense?
Well, let's just take the word intuition. It means tuition inside. It's cheaper than university, right?
Yeah, it is.
And it takes you much quicker to where you need to go. What is so fascinating about the intuition is it's so precise in ridiculous ways, like you're going to lose your bracelet. Or if you go to that place at that hour, you're going to meet this person. Very, very precise. Or you go to Israel and that's where you have to go. And then you hear a name, and that's where you have to go. And it's exactly everything I needed. It's like finding the proverbial needle in the haystack, right? So intuition, is it destined? I think that the most important thing to understand is that we have to get to alignment, that the whole universe is aligned. Now we've lost that understanding. And this is why we're so misaligned today, and there's so much, so many problems going on. and nature is rebelling and telling us we're not aligned and we really need to come back to alignment. And this is an inner truth that is inside of us that is not general, but actually precise, incredibly precise in sometimes ridiculous, absurd ways.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of a friend of mine who's a skeptic, and we had gone to the opera, but we had no tickets. And he was running around like a hen, hysterical, trying to get tickets. And I wasn't moving. So he gets mad at me. He comes back to me and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm looking for tickets." So he was very mad and he ran off hysterical. And just after that, somebody came up to me and said, "I have 2 tickets, front row. Would you like them?" I said, "Yes, how much?" He said, "Take them." So I understood that the universe was trying to teach my friend about intuition.
Mm-hmm.
So my friend saw that there were tickets, and we went to the opera, and he was very, very quiet. And then he says to me, "Let's get out quick so we can get a taxi." I said, "Okay, if you're so much in a rush, let's go out." So we go out just before everybody, and he's saying, "We'll never find a taxi." A taxi crosses the avenue, opens the door in front of us and says, "You're looking for a taxi?" And that was, he got very frightened. He didn't want to be friends with me anymore.
Do you feel like you were manifesting those experiences, Katherine?
For him, yeah.
So can you share a little bit? We want to talk about images for sure. Can you share, how did you make that happen?
Just alignment.
Well, for you, it's very simple, but for those who it might be very new to these concepts, or maybe they sometimes feel in alignment, but they're not really sure how they know they're in alignment. Can you kind of break that down for our listeners?
Well, for me, it had always been that way. So, but I see as I teach people that it's really more and more learning to look inside, learning to gaze within, right? And if, so something's happening on the outside, well, close your eyes, breathe out, and take a look. What does the inside say? What does it look like? Right? And when they learn really to look inside, which is called imagery, but is really reconnected with all the senses, but from within, then they're slowly going to find out that they have this muscle too. We called it a muscle. It's really a muscle.
So what if you have an inner voice that's in conflict with your gut feeling, intuition? Because I think it's important with alignment that our inner voice also is the same as our gut. But I know for myself, sometimes my inner voice will say something different than my gut. So I'm very curious what your advice would be on that. And I bet you there's somebody else out there listening probably that has a question about that.
This is just linguistics. This voice that you're talking about is not your inner voice. It's your mind talking.
Okay, I feel such relief, because here's the thing, what I know about intuition is truth. So when you speak truth, my whole body relaxed. I believe you. I agree. I think that's my mind, because it wouldn't make sense. And man, I'm sorry, you have a co-host that's super transparent, but it would come up in the world of love for me. I would be with people and I would hear he's not the one, you won't marry him. But yet those men kept loving me and wanting to be with me. And so I kept taking myself out and sabotaging every time. And I'm like, well, if my inner voice says that, I better listen. But yet my heart and my gut loved all of them. So it just confirms to me my head was trying to take me out. And I think that's why the way I teach intuition is straight to the heart, right? Because if I'm truly feeling in my heart, then I'm like, yeah, that can't be true. That's my head. So I want to call it, we do this. We're like, it's the heart thing, right? Because that's where we connected. And it's like the gateway, right? And she's going to make me cry because my partner is her cousin. And so she knows me inside and out, in 3 months. But it's just amazing to see that our bodies, I feel, are the receptor, if we imagine we're an instrument, because it can feel truth. When you just said that, like I said, I was completely relaxed and I can feel the energy move. So thank you so much for saying that. I wanted to wait until everybody was listening. When you got on, my eyes almost welled up because to me, intuition is wisdom. And I think you're probably older in age than Em and I are. And there's a wisdom that you carry. And so it's like I saw just this light, and then I saw you seeing me. And I'm like, oh, there's a presence. Intuition is a presence to me of love. And so it makes sense that if my mind would be saying the opposite of love, obviously it's just a thought, and it's
Well,
not.
I'm very glad you used the word probably. You're probably older than we are. I'm much, much
Well,
older.
I just wanted to make sure I didn't make any assumptions. I've gotten myself in trouble doing that before. So.
But I'm very, very young in heart.
I know you are. That's probably why I said probably, because to me, a body is just a body, and it's the soul and the energy. I mean, I started in 19 and people thought I was way older than I was. So it's kind of like, yeah, to me, physical age is very different than soul age. So.
No, but the heart for people is difficult to feel because they haven't been trained that way.
To feel their heart?
Feel their heart. I mean, this is what education has done, and competition, and being the best at school, and being popular, and social media, and how many people I have on my social media. It has nothing to do with the heart.
Unless you're connected to those people in your heart. Like I'm messaging so many people on social media because they know me and we're so in heart connection. So I think it's how we use, as long as we're in our heart and working from that place, whether it's on social media or in person, we're going to have that experience.
I'm saying that the culture itself has not gone towards heart.
Okay.
And that the culture needs to come back to heart, needs to come back to feeling the emotions. People don't understand emotion. They're afraid of it. They want to put it aside. In fact, emotion is absolutely essential to transformation. If there's no emotion, if I don't feel upset, angry, fearful, so forth, I have no juice to start transforming. So emotions are really, really important, but we are trained not to show them. Don't cry, don't show your emotions, wear the socially correct stuff. And you're doing the social media in a way that an intuitive would use it.
Yeah, of course. How can I be anything else?
You're being authentic about it. It's true. A lot of people look at their sense of self-worth by how many followers they might have, or quote friends, versus really being authentic perhaps within themselves. So Katherine, how would you suggest people be more comfortable being in their hearts and with emotions when somebody listening might be thinking, well, I can't go to work and cry, or I can't go to school and be angry because I'm mad at my friend or my teacher? That's not acceptable. It's been trained out of me. So how can people navigate listening to their emotions? And also, when are emotions intuition versus that it's something that is kind of out of alignment of intuition?
Well, I always describe it as oceans. So you've got the consciousness that is, consciousness, and then you have the ocean of the subconscious. At the top of the ocean, you have the garbage. We have to clear the garbage. Then we can see the true intuition, the soul, which is below. But I think that the easier way to help people is through their dreams. And even if they talk, let's say people come to me and they talk, I see it as a dream also. They tell me their story, I see it as a dream. So the dream itself has particular layers to it that are very easy to understand. The first is their story. Okay, let's clarify your story. What do you mean? Your daddy did that, your mommy did that, the bully did that. Okay, then what's the pattern that reappears? And then when we look at the pattern that is kind of blocking the flow, we can go in and do what we call a tikkun, which is a correction. So the plant is dying in your dream, let's water the plant. It sounds absurd, but the dream itself is talking to you. It's talking to you the language of intuition. That's the access. the subconscious. There is no transformation without the subconscious, without tapping into the subconscious. People think there is. And if they're lucky, they have a very good therapist who does a lot of talking, and then there's an intuition that suddenly happens. But it's not a technology on how to tap into the subconscious. Dream is a technology. And the imagery work that I teach is a technology on how to tap directly into it. Somebody who's never done it, breathe out, 3, 2, 1, eyes closed, 3, 2, 1, boom.
Yeah, Katherine, when I read your Kabbalah of Light book, which I really enjoyed, and I know that I've gotten to interview you on New Thinking Aloud before, so people are listening and want to check out that interview. It was quite popular. What really struck me about the exercises in your book is that they are very quick. And can you describe, I mean, you just did a little bit, can you go a little bit more in depth, a little further with how people can access, I know you mentioned through dreams, how can they access their subconscious, their ocean of their whole soul and consciousness, and get to those images in a way that could assist them?
They definitely need to do a little work at the beginning, unless they are naturally inclined towards looking inward, right? Most people are not inclined towards that. They're inclined towards looking at the world, and the world is powerful and is beautiful to look at. So they engage with the world. They're not necessarily making the bridge between what they feel and what the world is presenting to them. So there is a work to be done, and you see everywhere now people are interested in meditation. Or in mindfulness, or in yoga, or in some kind of quiet space. The moment you get into quiet space, or you lie down on the table and have some acupuncture done, boom, the dreaming body comes up. And the dreaming body is all of your subconscious that rises up and shows you something. Now, one of the things that most people who do imagery do not understand, and which is an ancient technique, is that, as I said, I can see in my garden that there's a nearly dead tree. Well, then I can take the watering can and water the tree. It's amazing how much then the tree starts to flourish. That'll change a person's life without having to discuss anything, without having to discuss mommy and daddy and the bully and all the difficult things, right? So, as I said, there's garbage on the ocean, and we need to deal with it. People can learn to do this very simply. Even a meditation technique will do that, a quietening, so I can look inside, right? Oh, I'm here and I'm talking to somebody, and I'm seeing an image that is frightening to me. The issue is to be able to see on the outside and see on the inside at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So let's say that I'm talking to somebody and I see an image of him walking away and slamming the door. I've had somebody tell me that. So I met this guy, and he was wonderful, and he's so handsome, and he had everything that she could imagine she wanted, right? But she had that first image, but she didn't listen to it. And he did exactly that 3 years later. Of course, she had all the experiences for 3 years, but then she had the horrible experience of him walking away and slamming the door. So can we reconnect with the inside? Because the inside knows everything. The inside has no time or space. It exists in the now, so that I can access what my body in time is going to go through. In 3 years' time, he's going to slam the door and say goodbye to me. So can I do something about it already?
You mentioned that this person had basically a precognitive insight that this was going to happen, but at the same time, you said that you can water the tree. So
she could have, but she didn't do it.
let's see.
And this is, in fact, an incredible technique, I should say. I hate to use the word, but it's like building the muscles. People today look terrible things happening, but if they were to look at the terrible thing and switch something inside, they're switching their consciousness and starting to manifest something different.
You know, like when you come out of a dream and you're like half awake, but you have the ability to change your dream. It kind of feels like that. Like I've done that. I'm like, ooh, I have a bad dream. Let me change it in that moment. It kind of feels like that because whatever that brain wave is, you know, where you're just like half asleep,
Right.
you can change it.
Well, when you do, when I say to them, close your eyes, breathe out 3 times, counting from 3 to 1, they're in a kind of a very light self-hypnotic place. It's like going into meditation, if you want, but it's very, very quick.
Yeah.
And then they can see the image, whatever that image is, right? And if necessary, they engage with it in a good way, if it's good, and if it's frightening. So I always tell the story of the guy who had these terrible nightmares. Every night for years, he had the same nightmares. He went to all the doctors and took pills and all the rest. Finally, he turns up at my office. We were old friends, and his wife said, come on, let's try, at least try. And he didn't want to try because he was very, reserved. But anyway, so the dream went like that. I'm running away. Somebody's running after me, and I'm terrified. My heart is pounding like crazy, and I wake up. So close your eyes, breathe out 3 times, and here's a shield of light. Here's put yourself in whatever cocoon of light. If you need a sword or whatever you need, I can't remember what it was, right? And he turns. He'd never turned to look, and he was a Gestapo guy. Now, he was a Jew who'd run away from the Gestapo when he was young, right? And the Gestapo guy says, finally, I've been running after you for 30 years.
Wow.
And then they shook hands. We don't need to do this anymore. They shook hands. And that was the end of his waking up with insomnia every night. We have to deal with the sensational images that we have, or the sounds that we have that are disturbing us. That's where the trauma is in the experience. Right? So the experience itself is full of senses. We are a sensory animal. We forget that. And so the images then appear from that sensory experience and get stagnant or locked into something frightening or difficult, right?
Katherine, would you be able to guide us in a little mini exercise? Because I know you can do this very quickly for those listening. And I really love that example about the garbage on the top of the ocean, because I think that when people start to do inner work or begin doing some type of meditation or relaxation technique, that people can see some of the places where they have wounds or past hurts or patterns of self-talk that can be negative, and they can be frightened and they try to jump away from that, and they don't then want to go in and connect with their heart. So if you have any tips or suggestions on how people can move past that, and I understand that it might take more than that, and I would love it if you can help us work with some images today as well.
Well, we can do a very simple exercise, right? But first, maybe we do an exercise for people to understand that if I create an image, it's going to affect my body. So if you close your eyes and breathe out slowly 3 times, counting from 3 to 1, seeing the numbers. See the 1 tall, clear, and bright. Imagine that you're in your kitchen and you have a nice lemon, very yellow, and you decide to cut it in 2. And as soon as you cut it in 2, smell the lemon and pay attention to what happens in your body. And breathing out, open your eyes. Very quick. So what happened in your body?
Little salivation happened there.
Exactly. So through a simple image, you can actually activate your body, which actually means that you can heal your body by creating the right kinds of images. But now let's look at it from an emotional point of view, okay? Close your eyes. Uncross legs and arms. It's always good. You sit up straight, uncross legs and arms, and breathe out slowly through the mouth, seeing the number 3. Breathe out to the number 2. Breathe out and see the 1, tall, clear, and bright. Imagine that somebody has put a key into the palm of your hand. Take a look at the key. What does it look like? Is it small? Is it big? Is it brass? Is it silver? Is it modern? Is it old? You just take a look at the key. Now breathe out slowly and find the lock that belongs to that key. Keep your eyes closed and put the key in the lock if you're ready to open the lock and see what you see. And breathing out, open your eyes. So Abby, you want to tell us?
No, I don't want to. Amy, why don't you share?
Abby was so transparent. I'll go first if you want me to, but do you feel ready, Abby?
I just saw you well up and not really. I want you to share.
Okay. Well, I saw a beautiful, large, kind of like an older skeleton type of key that was maybe like brass or tarnished or something, but very, seemed very special and important in my right hand. And then when you asked us to envision the lock, it was actually my heart, which is so interesting because I already feel like I have a really pretty open heart, but apparently it could use some more opening because I used the key to open it. And then when I opened it, I saw blue skies and white birds fly out.
That's cool. Freedom. To me, that's freedom when you say that. Like, that's just my interpretation of what you just shared. Like, freedom. Like, you have this freedom, It's just my thoughts for you.
Are you ready, Abby?
I mean, I can be ready. I'm like, it's really fascinating.
You don't need it, right? I mean, this is one of the things that are so important in the work. If a student doesn't want to say, they won't, and that's fine. I may say after the class, I need you to tell me just to be sure that you're safe.
Yeah, I mean, it's the opposite of that. It's just funny because it keeps coming up. There's just like a transition. And so the key I saw is the key that we both share to my partner's house. And on the external, it's not something that I would usually choose, but I put the key, I'm like, where does this key go? And it's to there. So I unlocked the door and I opened it. It was just gorgeous. It was like beautiful light, just the most beautiful place ever. And that's like what we're creating right now is totally like the home renovation, like it just being our sacred space. So I was kind of surprised that is what I saw. I mean, just the key, I was surprised by what came up, but it was just like, it keeps coming up, but it's very confusing for me because it's the opposite of like what I told you. Like my mind is just really trying to get in the way, but this is the third interview that, it's been pointing, for that next step. So it's very fascinating right now. My mind and my intuition, I'll just say fascinating. It's actually kind of annoying. But
follow the intuition.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, yeah, honestly, I was getting nightmares. I was like seeing like skeletal faces and I was like, oh my God, like, and we're literally like, we've been cohabitating like a half a block away for like a year and a half. And it's the same neighborhood, but it was the image of the dream was like, I was in another neighborhood. And I'm not like, I'm like a half a block away. So I'm like, my mind was like, this is a whole new thing. Like, it was very terrifying. And that's just like how we've both kind of been feeling for a few days. And I'm just like, it's just very weird to me that there'd be such a strong contrast of fear with such a great love. Because in business, like I said, it was very easy for me to follow my intuition and just know it. Like I felt it full body. It's like clients came in, blah, blah, blah. It was just one thing after another. I really didn't have much fear around it. So
seek your discomfort.
Seek my discomfort.
Yes, it's very beautiful, your discomfort.
Glad you think so. I mean, it's leading me somewhere else that I've never been before. So that might be where it's beautiful. And it's taking me out of the surface, the garbage on the ocean, and diving deeper, because I think we both kind of surprised each other, but there's just such deep, infinite soul love that's it's taking us both through a lot of layers. And we're like, whoa, does feel like the ocean, like, whoa, okay. It's beautiful, but it can be kind of prickly down there. Don't catch the wrong thing.
How fast this is, how fast the work is, right?
Yeah.
It takes 3, 2, 1, a little window opens, and boom, one really sees what the side wants.
I have another question. Why would we have any opposing force to intuition? This is just me talking because I love conversation. I'm just thinking out loud, because my old business manager, I used to be like, there's good and bad. And he's like, no, it's all love. It's all love. And it's like, it is all love. But why is there that contrast?
We live in a dual world.
Yeah.
And the whole, the mistake that people make is they get caught in the dual world. It's either or. But in fact, love is a third point. Love dissolves everything.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it's showing you love, and that's what you have to trust.
I know.
Now your mind has built you in a certain way. I'm an independent woman. I have my own career. I keep them at a distance and so forth. But the inside is really saying something much wider and much more, much deeper.
Yeah, it's much deeper. It's very fascinating with my career too. It's like taken this turn, and it's just been really interesting because it's like it's actually forced me to come closer, and not forced, but guided me to come in deeper partnership with him. Just it's like there's a higher reason why, but it's much deeper than, okay, I'll just go out and make $300. Like it's way deeper than it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Our culture is really superficial.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't really, we don't live in a world that is much more intuitive and close to nature and close to what the heart feels.
Yeah, by the way, it's like right by the ocean.
I'm an independent woman. I don't want to be caught in a relationship. So these are cultural ways that are blocking our hearing the truth about ourselves and our feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's very big in our culture. And I hate to use the word love because it's been completely demolished by Hallmark cards and little emojis, right?
Mm.
Which serve their purpose.
They serve their purpose.
Yeah.
Right.
But we're talking about the love that connects us all together, that even though we have our own unique characteristics and our sort of our soul imprint, if you will, that we are all really interconnected. And it sounds like, Katherine, you're sharing that if we allow ourselves to get quiet and just quickly allow whatever images to come forward, it can guide us in our life. So with that, you just suggested what comes forward. So with that kind of shows what's really going on for us in that moment, because you didn't ask us an intention, right? You just said allow an image to come forward.
Yeah. Well, the inside is we are made of dream. We're made of image. We're made of experience, and experience is image. And that's the truth about us. That's where we learn to realign. We have to come back to that truth and follow it. It's difficult because we're full of stuff in our heads, and now we're going to have AI. It's going to be even worse.
Right, because before we could speak, we had, well, we still do, but we had our senses and our thoughts, our consciousness and images. So for someone listening who is thinking, well, how can images help me maybe make a decision in life? Or how can images help me to understand something that's happening, so I maybe am not so sad about something that's happening, or maybe how it might help them with decisions? Do you have any other little simple exercises, or an exercise you could guide us in around something like that?
I do, but I'm not going to give it.
Okay.
Because before I give an exercise like that, I want to be sure that the person is going to listen. So let's say they're asking, should I move in with my boyfriend? So we do the exercise, and the exercise says, definitely move in now. And the person goes off and says, I can't do that. I won't do that. So this is a problem. We have to do this slowly, not slowly in the sense of being, but coming to a place where the person will be open to what they hear, what they see. Right?
Okay. Well,
it's a discipline.
Mm-hmm.
In a way. You called it a muscle. It's a muscle in a way, right? The intuition that speaks to us by sounds, by smells, by touch, by taste. But essentially, we call it image, because then all of the senses come together to guide us.
Mm-hmm.
And the image will guide us.
Mm-hmm. Well, I very much respect your boundaries around what you're willing to share with that. So for those listening, can you give some more ideas on when their intuition is speaking to them versus when it's not? Because I think that a lot of people over the years, and myself teaching people intuition and learning to trust it more myself, some people really have a hard time trusting it.
If they don't do the work of verification, they'll never trust it. That's why I'm saying it's a real discipline.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I talked to you about things I did when I was a student in Paris, right? I had all sorts of methods that I was testing out and writing down, and testing out more and writing down, because now I'm 78, nearly 79, right? If I hear something, I'm going. Because I'm sure I've tested it for so long with such determination that I'm sure that what I hear is true. And still I test.
Mm-hmm.
We have to test to the point where we are totally trusting.
Yeah.
And then we realize that inner voice is really God's alignment, our inner alignment to the rest of the world. And I think that the more we learn to trust that inner alignment in us, the more we're going to be in alignment with the world trying to realign and recorrect itself at this moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're doing the work of manifestation and helping the world to a better place than it is at this time.
Right. Well, really, the truth is we all have intuition, I believe, and that some of us are more connected to it or in alignment with it than others, like you said at the beginning, Katherine. And for me, it happened in dreams where I started getting information that was verified. In fact, I dreamt of 3 souls before they came into the earth plane. We hear about past lives or reincarnation, but this was actually visions before they came here, and I knew what they looked like. I knew their personalities. So that really shocked me. So when you're at the beginning, you said, pay attention to your dreams. And it was so shocking that I really wanted to understand intuition more. So I did, just like you, when you met Madame Colette, I met my teacher at a holistic health and wellness center, or one of my main teachers, but really my main spiritual intuitive teacher. And what I've learned is that when I open to receive the information and, like you say, follow it, and when it is true, I then have a sense of when it's accurate. And what I've noticed for me, and it may be different for other people, is that trust really seems to allow it to flow. And when people seem to doubt it or have fear, it can block it. Have you found that to be true?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the greatest problem is that we don't listen. And we need to listen. We need to follow. And we need to check it again and again. But we are our worst enemies.
Yeah.
and culture is too, and you know, the cultural expectations that surround us are our worst enemy, because you know, yeah, I might get a job at IBM and think, wow, am I lucky? But then I go to bed and I have a nightmare, and I get up in the middle of the night and I'm throwing up. The body is really saying, don't take the job. It's not what you want to do. It's very difficult. It takes courage.
Well, that happened to me. Yeah, I started having significant anxiety and I literally couldn't go to my job. It just didn't feel right anymore. So I had to leave and I didn't understand what was happening. But it was really, you know, sometimes we think about fear or anxiety or quote negative emotions blocking us from intuition. But in that instance, those feelings were actually my intuition saying, no, this is in alignment with your highest good and greatest joy and how, you know, I meant to serve. And so now I can look back 20 years later and realize that that was really a gift, even though it was really hard to go through. And I think what you say about cultural conditioning is really true in that, you know, one of the reasons I love encouraging people with intuition and so grateful to have you with us today, Katherine, is because I do believe that the world would be very different if more of us did listen to that. And like you've been saying, when we look around what's happening in the world, that really is a manifestation of all of our collective consciousness. What we see is what we get, but you're suggesting that we can go within and create a new reality for ourselves and others.
And for the world.
And for the world, yes.
Because we see the world, I mean, nature is in disarray. It's not in alignment. And it's rebelling. So it's throwing up and it's saying, this is not the job I'm supposed to be doing. I don't need to create all these hurricanes and it's flooding and all the rest. I want us to be in harmony. So the alignment is all over the universe. It's one alignment. And we have to do our little bit. Our personal alignment is helping the larger alignment.
Yes.
We really have to work at returning back, looking inward, accepting our emotions, and flowing with them. And there's a work to be done with that. This, of course, is true, but it's worth every moment that we spend doing that. Right?
Right, because it's a journey of transformation, really. Or transforming the limitations that keep us from connecting within is maybe another way to say it.
Right. That's why I'm saying it's the garbage on the ocean. The moment that you move the garbage aside, it's magnificent.
Yeah.
Like nature is magnificent also.
Yeah.
The more you look inside at your own nature, you'll be amazed at how beautiful it is. I work often in groups. I've just finished a series of workshops. So in groups, you see it so well because you've got 40, 50 people there, but they're all doing the same kind of exercise, but each one of them is totally original, totally different. And you see the beauty inside. It's very, very moving. You also see the blockages and how quickly they can be dissolved. And so the images start to flow and grow on their own, right? So it's different from visualization, in which visualization is telling you what to see. This is really what I call sapphire imagery. It's creating a little jolt. I mean, even just giving you the key is a jolt. Finding the lock, well, is a jolt. Opening and seeing what is on the other side is a jolt. And the jolt is what allows the insight to leap up and to show you what it is. Right? And this is very specific to the lineage that I represent, is the jolt.
Yeah, can you share a little bit more about the lineage of the Kabbalah of Light?
Well, that's the other part of my story, which is many, many years later. I was traveling in the south of France and looking for signs of the origins of our lineage, which is in the south of France in a place called Vauvert. And everything had been dissolved. I mean, the French were not very prone to liking Jews, and so the history has been erased in part. But I was in a little bookstore, and there was a book, and it said the Jews of the 12th century in the south of France. Now, the lineage began with somebody called Isaac the Blind in the south of France in the 12th century. He was blind, not because he was really blind, but because he was looking inside. So anyway, I opened the book, and there's my mother's family. Right away, boom, there's my mother's family name written in full letters in the book. And they had long since abandoned Judaism. And then it turned out, because I did a lot of research after that they lived just next to Vauvert, next to Isaac the Blind, and they were students of his. So I had done the whole journey and met somebody across the world that I would not have found by doing it intellectually, I can tell you. And I was doing the work that my ancestors were doing 800 years ago. That's intuition.
Your intuition guided you to your ancestors and also to a significant part of your life purpose, it sounds like.
A whole life purpose. Yeah, really, very strongly. That's what I've done all my life. Since I was a tiny child, I was doing that long before I met Colette.
It was just natural to you.
Yeah. And it's that natural to a lot of people, don't get me wrong. I just happen to be guided in that strong way, probably from ancestral memories back to the source. And Isaac the Blind was a very great luminary, great sage, known all over the Jewish world at the time. Where he got his insight is a mystery. He said it came from inner vision. So we go on working with inner vision. And I hope to me, it's very, very modern. It's very quick. So people can know on the spot. They can look at a dream, and on the spot, you can see what the issue is. The American Indians have a tradition of that sort too. They get up in the morning and share their dreams. Very powerful. And then the dream itself can be corrected. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm changing the nature of what I've seen. It simply means that I'm continuing the story, or I'm engaging with the situation. So if I have a dream that shows me something, difficult or dark or whatever that I can clear up, it's going to change my day and my relationship to the boss and whatever issues appear, right? So to me, it's an incredibly optimistic, powerful way of living, which I've taught to many, many, many hundreds of people.
How is the Kabbalah of Light different from other forms of Kabbalah, or what does it have that makes it unique and special?
Well, again, it's the inner vision. Because you have a lot of Kabbalah that became quite intellectual. So you take the name of God, for example, it has 4 letters, and then you start twisting them around and moving them around. And it does a bit like, the dhikr, when the Sufis move their heads very, very fast. It kind of stops the mind, the mental, from working and puts you in a trance. So that's a particular way. This one is accessible to anybody. It's extraordinarily simple. And you do it as children. Children are constantly doing that, except when they've been given iPads for their Christmas. They're all on their iPads and they're not exercising their imagination anymore. But imagination is the root of manifestation. You got to dream it for it to happen. And so for children, to do this work is amazing. I mean, they do it naturally, or they used to. So hopefully we're not building a generation of children who never use their imagination. But their imagination teaches them strength, teaches them courage, teaches them, oh, there's a new way of thinking of this. So there's another way of catching the robber, jumping up on the roof and climbing on down the pipe, and I'm going to catch the robber. And then I'm going to make friends with him. And so they play with this. And the more they play with this, the more they educate themselves.
Yeah. There's even research, I believe, that shows that when a child is between the ages, or children are between the ages of 4 and 7, that if they are encouraged to listen to their imagination or intuition, that they're more likely to do that throughout life and be able to access this, which I think is a great asset in life. However, if they're told, no, that imaginary friend isn't real, or you're making things up, you need to shut that up and put it under lock and key, right, Katherine? And I'm so glad we're talking about this, because I know for myself, I was encouraged to, I mean, not in a huge way, but in little ways. Like my father would talk about a past life memory he had, or my mother was talking actually with one of our mutual loves in life, Abby's partner. His mother was talking with my mother one day about having out-of-body experiences. And I just happened to, I think I was like maybe 8 or 10 years old, and I just heard them talking about it. So it kept my mind and my consciousness open to that. And I know Abby also is working, she has a beautiful project called The Intuitive Child. And I know, Katherine, you've written a book about dream birth. So can you share any more about how we can encourage children to be with their imagination? I mean, I know play is a big one, and to be able to harness and trust that intuition and continue with their creativity in life.
Take away all the iPads, iPhones, and half of the books and toys that are in their rooms.
Go to nature.
Give them 6 books. Anyway, 6 books are enough, because they want you to read it again and again and again and again. And so you read a fairy tale again and again and again. And then at some point, that's it. So you introduce another book and take that one away. So you're reducing the input from the outside and letting them figure it out. And that's what makes them really grow. Right? Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't look at cartoons for half an hour in the morning. I'm not saying that. It might help the parents to be able to take their shower before they go to work. But too much is really too much. And it stops the mind from, the imaginal mind from doing its work. To me, that's the greatest education of all, is that they use their imagination. And then you can really bring it into the education, which is not what's happening. I mean, I remember my son was asked, he had a test to go into school at 3.5 years old. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, the creativity and arts aspect, you mentioned that you are an art historian, Katherine, and I can see how your work with images and art has been related, and being able to express ourselves seems very important, and having those creative outlets and well, creating things or manifesting things seem really important to who we are as humans.
I think that if they're allowed to do that as children, they are going to maintain their creativity. And they are going to find creative ways of living their lives, right? And this is our source. This is our strength. This is our core. So I call it imagination or dreaming. It's not very popular these days, unfortunately. Right?
Well, that's why we're doing this, is we're wanting to help encourage people that what we're talking about can be very simple. It doesn't need to be complex or cost a lot of money.
Exactly. I mean, this is very simple. And as I said, the children know how to do it automatically. They'll find an obstacle and they'll find a solution. Mm-hmm. And that's a creative movement of the imagination. And if we block it by developing their, filling their minds with images they haven't created, or filling their minds with ideas they have to learn how to read at 3 or 4 years old and things like that, they're not playing with the forms. They're not playing with their whole body. And I think we need to maintain that and develop that. Now, we can, with adults, do that. We can re-educate by doing the imagery. The way that we do it at the school, the way I teach it, the way Colette also taught it, was very quick exercises. Let's say a class will be 15 quick exercises, one after another. And by the end of that, there's a particular subject, let's say, that the exercise is dealing with. And then by the end of it, you've taken on 10 different perspectives on the subject matter. Nobody's telling you what it means, but you've experienced what it means.
Right. And allowing us to take the time to get in touch with those images and those symbols and those feelings within us. We really do have the answers within. It's just really allowing ourselves to give ourselves the opportunity to do that, versus feeling like we have to rush from one thing to the next or accomplish, so many things on our to-do list, but to really slow down. And that's what I love about your work and your lineage, Katherine, is that those exercises can be so quick. And I do respect meditation and that has its place as well, but it is astounding how quickly those images can come into your mind.
And they show you where you're at, and so you can move with them very quickly. It's a very empowering and exciting way of inner development. There are really two great roads. You can take Zen Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism. So Zen Buddhism, clear the mind of all images, get to the nothingness. Or the other one, which is go for the forest of images and work with it until you come to the nothingness also.
And then when you come to that nothingness,
which is light.
Yes.
Space creates, I feel like space creates, that light does create.
Well, our bodies create the light. Every time you dream, you're looking inward into the darkness. And why is there technicolor there? We're creating light. We're creating, actually, if you read the Bible, that's the first thing that happens. And there was light, but there's no sun, no moon, no stars. So where does it come from? It comes from our actually looking inward into the darkness, and light appears if you do that.
Our star seed, I feel like it's like a star seed or something, like our souls, like there's a light inside of us. It's the star almost. It feels like a star, soul star.
You are made of starlight. You are made of star matter, right? So you're igniting the light in you, and that is a creative process.
Yeah. And illuminating the path of your highest potential. That was my tagline when I first started it, because I was like, man, like we are that light. And if we illuminate that path of our highest potential, our intuition is going to follow it, because that's already there.
Well, the intuition is that. It's the,
yes, exactly that. Yeah.
It's that the form you need to see at this moment. That's what the light takes on, that form, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the way,
really an extremely fast way to illumination.
And the ways that we have desires that might not be in alignment with our own soul's true desires, or the ways that we might be feeling. And of course, we want to honor when people have grief and loss. It's very normal to, sometimes it might be referred to as depression, but if we are maybe feeling stuck in maybe certain thought patterns, but that can block us from that light.
Of course. But that's the work, right? We look inside at that darkness, and the moment you do, something starts moving.
Yeah.
So the person doing the work, in fact, finds their own strength, because I'm not telling them what to see. Yeah, I tell you you have a key, but I'm not telling you what the lock is going to look like, nor what it's going to open. So in a way, it's just a focus. The key would be a focus. So there are thousands of ways of finding a focus that is going to help the person to discover who they really are. We try not to interpret.
So, right. So I had that image of the blue sky and the white birds. So that's left to me to interpret what that means for me.
Don't interpret it, you live it.
Live it. Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Amen.
Love that.
It's all
Real
about-
life, lady.
I'm sorry, Katherine, say that again.
It's all about experience.
Yeah.
Now, at first, people really want to know, well, what does it mean? Well, I mean, I can tell you what it means, but it's not going to help you. So we do less. As a secondary dreamer of this dream, this is what it means to me, but it might not mean that to you. So we do what I call a dream opening, in which we have, let's say, 14 different secondary dreamers. And each one of them looks at it from their point of view. And that brings a richness to the experience. Well, it is my image, and I've seen this, and I've seen the doves and the light, and so it means this to this one and this to that one. There's no fixing. This is what it means. Because the moment you do that, you fix and block a person. You want them to flow and to be constantly creative, right? Like a great fountain.
Such a good word, flow.
Mhm.
Yes. And I believe that when we're connected to our intuition, at least for me, I feel very in the flow.
That's what intuition is.
Yeah.
You know, it's the image that rises up from nothingness into being. And if you follow it, then your life is very accomplished.
Right.
It's allowing that energy to flow, I think, because even like I have something called the Intuitive Success Club, and it aligns the chakras. And so what I've told people and I've experienced in all the years of practice and also in my own life is when you allow that energy to flow, you naturally become one with your soul, your higher self, and then you embody it and you're in that just state of grace. You're just flowing your soul energy. And so it's that emergence of that. So I think the biggest block is usually fear, because that stifles it. It blocks it, right? So to actually bring love into those places opens that river to flow.
People don't understand emotion. They never make a difference between emotion and feeling. And emotion is what allows you to trigger feeling. Emotion is stuck.
Energy.
So I'm fearful, I'm more constrict. I'm angry, I'm exploding, right? But then that energy is still energy. So I can shift it into what I call feeling, which is all the expansive. For example, love is a feeling. It's not an emotion. It's a feeling. It expands me in all directions. So denying ourselves our emotions, we are denying the very energy that's going to help us to grow into an expanded consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh my gosh, Katherine, we could talk with you for hours, and I know that our time is limited here. Is there anything else you want to share today about creative images and intuition? And we also want to hear about how people can get in touch with you, and that you mentioned that you have a gift that you want to offer as well, if you'd be willing to share what that is.
It's going to be an exercise. And then there's also definitely what we call tastes. So if you go on the website, which is the School of Images, you will see what we call tastes that appear very, very regularly. So you can have a free 15 or half an hour of class to find out how it works, right? And then after that, there are the beginner classes and so forth. But the tastes are free and enable you to find out. But there are three pillars, really, 3 or 4 pillars in the work, but imagery, dream opening, And then there's also something I call morphology, which you questioned me about right at the beginning, is reading the forms, because if you're an imager, the forms have meaning. So a bowl will hold, but a knife will cut, right? And so forms have a language. And if I listen to the forms of the dream, that's a language, right? But if I look at the forms of your face or your body, it also tells me about how your energy is moving. I'm very, very quiet about it, right? Because I don't want people to be frightened, but really, you can move your energy and you can change your forms somewhat, right? Or you can use them in a positive way. But anyway, you were asking me about the school. So the school is quite accessible. If you go to the website, you'll see easy ways of entering into the school and finding out what the school is doing. Right.
Abby, do you have any more questions or comments?
Just thank you. It's just such a pleasure. I just feel very blessed by your presence, and yeah, just the grace. And you, Em, are just so good at doing this. It's really fun. So thank you.
Well, thank you for allowing me to speak.
Let the
Very lucky to have you join us, Katherine, with your background. And I just want to highlight too about how you've had what some people might refer to as a synchronicity or serendipity, but really I think it's an alignment. When you met certain people on your path and you had all those verifications, that when we follow our intuition, I have found, and working with lots of people, that those experiences can happen that maybe can show us that we're on the right path, or that can help us to activate our soul's potential even more. What are your thoughts on that, Katherine?
Totally agree. Pay attention to the patterns. Pay attention to what pops up. Because dream is like a pop-up out of the ocean, the vast ocean of experience. Pop comes an image. And it's the same in the world outside, because it's also a dream world. So if I've got a question in my mind and a book pops up, I should take a look at it. Or a saying written on a bus as it moves by that answers my question. It's a dream world. There's a synchronicity of what happens on the outside and on the inside. The more you get aligned, the more it happens.
Mm-hmm. And to pay attention, right? I think sometimes, well, all the time, the universe, our soul, consciousness, however you want to term it, or God, whatever your belief is speaking to us. It's just we need to pay attention.
If you pay attention, life becomes a lot of fun.
I'm so glad that we paid attention to you today, Katherine. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's been a great joy. Thank you all for joining us, and bye for now.